Hi everyone. Let's take a look and see what happens when our body is not able to control glucose levels for some reason. So we're going to be taking a look at diabetes mellitus. And there's actually two types of diabetes. There's diabetes mellitus, and then there's something called diabetes insipidus. Diabetes insipidus is going to be what happens with not enough ADH is being produced. So we'll take a look at that once we get to that chapter. We'll take a look a little bit more at ADH and diabetes insipidus. But until the meantime, or in the meantime, I guess I should say, we're going to be taking a look at diabetes mellitus. This is going to be where you have an inadequate uptake of glucose from the blood. And remember, I mentioned how if you have chronically high levels of glucose, it can cause damage to kidneys, damage to blood vessels. Diabetes mellitus really affects pretty much every single body system. It can cause blindness, kidney failure. It causes problems with circulation, which can lead to amputation as well. And it's also related to heart disease and stroke. We're going to take a look at a couple of different types. We're going to take a look at type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is going to be one that has an autoimmune component. It's going to be where the cells of the immune system, certain cells of the immune system, actually go and attack the beta cells that are going to produce insulin. And of course, if you don't have any beta cells, then you are not producing insulin, which means that you cannot get glucose into your cells that way. Type 1 diabetes will typically occur in children and younger individuals. So I'm not saying that older individuals won't discover they have type 1 diabetes, because it can happen. But usually what happens is that because your body's not producing insulin, you have to take daily insulin injections, or you have a pump that's giving you insulin. Some signs and symptoms of type 1 diabetes is going to be the type of dramatic weight loss, but also increased thirst and increased urination. Really what's happening, the reason why, it's because of the fact that your cells aren't able to use the glucose that's in the bloodstream as fuel. You don't have that shuttle to get the glucose into the cells to use it for cell respiration. So what it does is it has to turn to fat cells. It has to turn to protein. It will start breaking those down, and it will use those alternative fuels instead. So that's why an individual will lose weight. So the reason why increased urination occurs and increased thirst occurs is because of the fact that these high levels of blood glucose eventually make it down to the kidneys. And then the kidneys will eventually secrete that glucose. And remember, wherever glucose goes, water goes. And so you're losing these huge amounts of glucose and also water in urine. And that's why you have an increase in urination. And the body's natural feedback to that, or natural stimulus to that, is, hey, I need more water. I'm going to get very thirsty because of it. So that's going to be the reason why you have a couple of these signs and symptoms like weight loss, increased urination, and increased thirst. Now let's take a look at type 2 diabetes. This is going to be where, for some reason, those little receptors that insulin binds to, in order for the whole process to occur to get glucose, those glucose pumps or glucose transport mechanisms, they're not responding. So they're either they're not responding, or sometimes it's from insulin is not being secreted enough either. But usually it's because of this ineffectiveness of insulin, and the receptors are just not responding to the insulin. Usually it's from diabetes. One of the major causes of type 2 diabetes is going to be obesity, they have found. But it can happen in older adults, and it also can happen in younger adults, and it's happening more in children lately because of obesity. And some of the things that doctors will tell you is to treat it with diet and exercise, because diet actually goes in and can kind of stimulate these new receptors to be made to be more responsive to insulin. but also treat it with diet. Your diet can definitely affect it as well, and sometimes medication has to be given as well because of it. Let's take a look and see what happens when you have hypoglycemia, which is where you have glucose levels that are below that 60 milligrams per deciliter. So lots of different causes. Maybe took too much insulin. That can definitely cause a dip in glucose levels. Prolonged exercising. If you think about it, your body's going in and trying to use all of that fuel, and then that can lead to hypoglycemia. Alcohol use, interesting. Liver or kidney dysfunction as well. But another thing, it can be from glucocorticoids or growth hormone deficiency and that. Remember how we talked about glucocorticoids and growth hormone? Glucocorticoids and growth hormone, two things that they do is they go in and help increase glucose levels or nutrient levels in the bloodstream. So there is one of the effects there. Some of the symptoms is, of course, you're very hungry, dizzy, confusion, so you have some kind of mental ineffectiveness, sweating, and sleepiness. So glucagon needs to be given if the individual is not able to eat or if they're unconscious. Usually if you're kind of having some of those early symptoms, then you can eat something preferably with sugar, maybe just a little hard candy or something like that can be given, or orange juice. But if a person actually passes out from the hypoglycemia because it dips too low, then they have to be given glucagon. So in the very last video, we're going to be taking a look at the last section, and that's going to cover other endocrine glands that we are either going to talk about a little bit later on in the semester, or just some other ones that we haven't gotten to just yet. So until next time.